Hello out there, everyone. Welcome back to Telling Tales. Welcome back to the Cincinnati Chronicles. It's been a while. It's been probably, I'm going to say it's been nearly a year. I think it's been nearly a year since we were last in the World of Darkness. Yeah, and who thought we'd ever be here for a final arc that consolidates and finishes off the meta plot? Certainly anyone paying any remote attention to the hints I kept dropping and basically what I all but said at the end of the main run of Cincinnati Chronicles. But we're here finally to do it, and we hope we find you well. I do have a bit of a preamble I will lead into before we start doing all the usual stuff. But before that, let's get the promo out of the way. Down below this stream or video, you will find a number of links. There's links to Twitch and YouTube. You're watching on one of those two platforms, please check out the other. Twitch is where we stream live weekly, and YouTube is where you can find all our video on demand. So all of our previous streams are available on there. You'll also find links to our Discord, our Patreon, our social media. If any of those interest you, give them a look. We currently run 3 weekly campaigns. There's Vason on Mondays with Johnny and the Monday Crew. There is Simbaroom on Wednesdays, sort of our flagship campaign that has been running for a long time now. And then there's this, Cincinnati Chronicles, starting up on Thursdays. It's not going to be a terribly long one, not like a really long-running campaign. We're looking to probably finish it off in 4 sessions in a similar fashion to the old arcs, but we'll see how that goes. We'll see how it goes. We also run one-shots, 1 or 2 of those a month, the most recent of which was Mask Witches of Forgotten Doggerland. That'll be turning up on YouTube sometime soon. And we have Land of Eam, whimsical Muppets meets Lord of the Rings thing, coming towards the end of the month on 25th of June. And then next month is weirdly Motorbike Month on Telling Tales, where on the first weekend of the month we have Johnny's Bat Out of Hell one-shot. So tune in to find out what the hell that is. And then later on in the month, mid-month, I'll be running Hell Knight, lovely Doom Biker TTRPG that I'm basically treating as Mandy, the role-playing game. So if you like the sound of that, then do tune in. Okay, let's get a preamble out of the way before we start introducing players, talking about what's happened since the last arcs of the Cincinnati Chronicles, and then getting into the role-playing of it. So if this is the first time you're encountering Cincinnati Chronicles, I by no means am trying to turn you off watching the rest of this, okay? But what I will say is this is the 6th out of 6 arcs of Cincinnati Chronicles. They have been laden, all of them, with meta plot and like interweaving storylines that do so in quite a satisfying and clever manner, if I do say so myself, depending on what you think of that kind of thing, I suppose. And there's a possibility that this arc will make little to no sense to you without having either seen the rest of the Cincinnati Chronicles or having a fairly encyclopedic knowledge of the old world of Darkness. But hey, if you want to prove me wrong, stick around and prove me wrong. But that's all I'll say about that. All of the previous arcs are available on our YouTube. So if you hear that and say, well, fuck this, then I'm going to go watch them from the beginning instead, you're more than welcome to. I'd be delighted, in fact. So with that in mind, let's start introducing people. I'm going to start bringing on the players one by one. They'll tell us a little bit about the primary character they'll be playing in this arc. And after they've done so, I'll go over very, very quickly what each arc entailed, and then we'll get into it, not to be too exhausting about it. So let's bring on one of our players in private chat has just said, I dare you to enjoy this stream, viewer, and described it as a power move. Yeah, sure. Let's bring on the first player. Let's bring on Holly. Hello, Holly. Welcome back.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. You are playing Natalia Wolf, who is your character in the vampire storyline, the first one that we did. Do you want to describe what's Natalia about? You know, what's her thing? Who is she?
She is like a slightly erratic, kind of charming-ish, punk, grungy graffiti artist vampire, who got turned relatively recently. I think we decided like a year before the first arc, so about 2 years ago
not
now.
Long. Yeah.
was turned because her sire really liked her art and wants to like add her to the collection of Toreador artists.
I was going to say, from that description, it's like anyone familiar with Vampire will be like, way before you said it, will be like, oh, Toreador then.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yes. And as part of the coterie that that kind of went through with that storyline, Natalia investigated a breach or a potential breach of the masquerade that happened within the city of Cincinnati on behalf of Prince Ludlow, the somewhat a prince who at least publicly likes to take a certain backseat on sorting things in the city. But this was important enough to spark his attention. It turned out in the end that the man responsible for this breach of the masquerade was his former ghoul. And there was this kind of veil of secrecy over that you had to wade through before eventually finding out that essentially the turning this ghoul into a kind of someone who could murder a whole gas station full of regular mortals was a sort of process you weren't quite sure who was responsible for it in the first place, although at least one person responsible seemed to be a mysterious individual called Lincoln, who you never managed to identify. And in the end, basically, this former ghoul ended up being destroyed, and the prince ended up sort of congratulating and thanking you, and sort of threatening you at the same time to keep your mouth shut.
It was very much a threat.
It was very much a threat. So that's kind of where we left things with that arc. Let's bring on our next player. Our next player is Chris. Wonderful Chris with his friend. Chris is going to be playing his werewolf character, Beanstalk. Chris, give us the lowdown on Beanstalk, please.
Well, Beanstalk is your friendly silent strider, Theurge Metis. He has a shrouded and enigmatic past, and a bit of has no real memory of his early years, but was taken under the wing by an equally enigmatic mentor, and has been very much walking in a very somewhat traditional path of the Garu Theurge in spiritcraft and learning stuff, and ended up in Cincinnati came from the Sept of the Green, which is quite a famous place to come from.
He did, and I also didn't make the link on that. The link in that with some more details we'll be providing later. But I literally wrote all these stories and didn't click that you're from the Sept of the Green. Didn't click even remotely. So I hope none of you have been looking at that as an Easter egg or something, because it's entirely not true. Beanstalk arrived in Cincinnati along with the rest of his pack on a cross-country travel from the Sept of the Green to the Sept of the Western Eye on the west coast of America. And your van broke down in Cincinnati, and this seemed like quite a misfortune until you managed to discover a quite horribly worm-corrupted and polluted site nearby. You went in, slaughtered the Fomori you found there, found further clues, which, along with the help of a were-raven, enabled you to essentially infiltrate and then destroy a Pentex-affiliated horror factory producing corrupted children's toys and other such things. You slaughtered the company executive who was possessed by a bane and partly responsible for this, but you never managed to track down the mysterious Mr. Hunter, who also seemed to be involved in this somehow. I think that's a pretty good summation of Werewolf. Let's bring on the next player. It is Pierre, who plays Carolyn Zelrech, the Mage. Pierre, tell us all about Carolyn.
Well, Carolyn she's a bit of a hippie. She's kind of very, very chill, got a kind of childlike kind of wonder about her. She's a dancer. She believes that the world has a rhythm that you can just listen to, and if you listen carefully enough, you can time everything so that it all comes out perfectly. And she's a time mage, probably. I guess also correspondence. So she's all about time and space and the manipulation thereof. She's very sort of free-flowing and has on occasion been prompted to do what we affectionately call a time dance, which perhaps we will see at some point during these chronicles. She is I guess just like she's a very friendly, enthusiastic individual who is sure that nothing bad can happen, although her recent events have perhaps put a little bit of a damper on her her feelings, because
Absolutely.
she seems to have been targeted.
Absolutely, and I think for anyone who wants to know the like specifics as well, Carolyn is a member of the Cult of Ecstasy tradition of mages, and Carolyn was part of essentially a field trip that went very wrong of mages who were all studying at a place called Narentus University, which is a university set out in a far spirit realm from the earth, essentially. And at the behest of her professor, Will Cray, she went out with a circle of other mages in order to investigate strange goings-on in Cincinnati, where Professor Cray had said he'd left a number of beacons sort of alerting him to potential misuse of or extreme use of magic within the city for purposes that kind of remain a bit obscure, other than that he's from there. And essentially, you went and had to track down kind of the happenings here in a sort of mid-story arc that kind of was you investigating what had happened during Vampire and Werewolf, and then getting a little look at what was going to happen in Wraith and Changeling later. A number of odd things happened that sort of tied plot lines together, but ultimately, what was discovered via time dancing above all else is that an individual seemed to be responsible for a great deal of the things happening here. An individual of quite potent magical powers, clad in dark green robes and seemingly possessed of significant abilities to warp reality in a number of ways. And in a number of ways that didn't seem to correlate too well with the restrictions of what mages do a lot of the time. And it essentially ended with that individual chasing you back to the doorway of Narentus University, and you kind of being rescued by your professor and stumbling back a little bit chastened and alarmed, but what you'd seen and experienced. If that seems like an adequate summary of those things. So let's bring on our next player, and our next player is John, who's going to be playing Abby Atkinson, who was John's character during Wraith. John, why don't you give us a quick summary of good old Abby, please?
So in life, Abby was a well-known children's author, and a very not at all well-known mystery writer, which she wrote under a pseudonym because her publishers didn't think her name could sell a mystery thriller. She's very bitter about this, and is also quite bitter that she's dead. Is not entirely sure how it happened, but is pretty sure she was murdered. And so she's trying to solve her first and last real case and find out what happened. Why is she dead?
Absolutely. And what happened to Abby alongside a number of other wraiths is that within the kind of area of Cincinnati in the Shadowlands where wraiths dwell, a number of wraiths, quite a lot of wraiths in fact, found that one of their fetters had gone missing, and ended up tracing them all to the old library of Cincinnati, which turned out to be, unfortunately, a horrible trap where an individual in, you've guessed it, floaty dark green robes turned up and consumed the fetters in an inferno, dragging many of the wraiths of Cincinnati down further into the labyrinth, into their own harrowings, and creating a rift in the local Shadowlands that quickly turned into a developing maelstrom, which most of the Wraiths, our players included, had to flee from through an increasingly dangerous Shadowlands of Cincinnati to the citadel of the hierarchy of Cincinnati, which had great soul steel walls and a battery of iron cannons and all defense of the legions, all of which was essentially nothing in the face of the growing maelstrom. You managed to make it within the walls, partly thanks to the to some random encounters you had, but also thanks to the guidance of a ferryman who was seemingly attempting to quell the maelstrom. And then we ended that story with the maelstrom consuming the citadel with our wraiths inside. How did that work out for them? Well, we're going to find out tonight. It's also worth noting that at least one of the wraiths you encountered along the way ascribed the identity of the green robes individual as Lord Malachite. So add that to the list of names. And finally, our final player for the night is Inga. Inga is playing Rhea, her character from Changeling the Dreaming. Inga, why don't you tell us all about Rhea?
Yeah, Rhea is an Ishu Wilder. She as funny as Pierre was describing Carolyn, I was like, I think Rhea and Carolyn would get on. She's also a very kind of free spirit. She was on a road. She was partway along a little road trip around the US when she kind of got caught up in these events, but was quite happily along for the adventure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think weirdly, like with the road trip wandering aspect, maybe Beanstalk would also be a bit of a potential companion. The Changelings were going about their business in the freehold of Fontainebleau, which is the Changeling name for the Dreaming of Cincinnati. They had made their way to Lady Marcella's garden party, essentially a celebration, which was rudely interrupted by the arrival of someone who mentioned that the Knights of the Golden Trail, a local kind of fading association of noble knights, basically their castle had been invaded and people had been murdered. Rhea was part of the motley sent to determine this, and after tracking the trail of these thieves and murderers for a certain amount of time, they eventually ended up in a confrontation with both them and there was essentially an evil knight who had to be dealt with, partially via the return of a fabled individual known as the Azure Knight, who turned out to be a minor side character who turned up in all 5 stories. But you also tracked an evil satyr sorcerer to Eden Park, where he'd managed to unleash the dreaming evocation, I suppose, of Shere Khan from the Jungle Book, which was quite terrifying. But after it all had ended, the right people had been consumed, and Shere Khan had been driven off, and it was generally perceived as a great success. You managed to rescue one of the squires of the Knightly Order. You returned the Azure Knight to Cincinnati, and ultimately you'd had a quest and fought evil and survived, which seemed pretty positive. Also worth mentioning, it probably doesn't mean anything, but the satyr sorcerer is working for someone called the Baron of Jade, which probably doesn't matter really. It's probably something for another day, I'd imagine. Hey, this is another day. What about right now? Okay, so those were the stories. I am aware that was a very long preview where we summarized a lot of information there. As I said right at the beginning, don't worry about it. If you're just watching this from scratch and you're not heeding my warnings, it's fine. Just come along for the ride. But if not, and you're interested in more of that stuff, go and watch it from the beginning, and it'll all make a lot more sense. With that in mind, one extra warning for tonight. If you watch this entire thing and think this guy's a massively railroady GM, yeah, that's what tonight is going to be. Look, you try doing a 5 splat crossover event, right? And see where it gets you. We're going to do some railroading tonight, right? It's going to happen. I'm going to be reading shit out. But it's all fine. It's all fine. We'll get there. We'll get there. Okay. So before we jump in with any of you, I do have something to read out to set the scene. if you will. Somewhere else, eyes open. They flicker to every angle, piecing together a kaleidoscope of images from many places, many times, many realms. Briefly, they go still, resting on a single moment long gone. Green and grey cliffs at the edge of a wide blue ocean. A man stands there, a man lost and alone in a place he knows and loves as his home. For only a moment, the eyes linger there, and then gone in 1,000 directions. A hand reaches out, twisting the world into new forms. Only he can hear the noise it makes, the slow, low scream of reality being torn and then mended awry. Is it time? A year and a day. That is fitting. That will help force matters into place, molding existence into shapes that slide together snugly like a child's toy. The kaleidoscope churns faster, but with a new focus, the chaos somehow feeding the order of things. There are 5. There is 1, he says gently, the words leaving trails of color and emotion in the air like soft, slow fireworks. 5 seeds, 1 sower. The hand spreads its fingers, plucking subatomic threads with practiced ease. 5 roots, 1 garden. A warm and welcoming smile spreads, the satisfaction of labor well performed, as space and time coalesces at his touch like a cowed animal. 5 flowers, 1 reaper. The smile freezes in Rictus, and he breathes harshly through his teeth in anticipation of the harvest. All right, let's check into Cincinnati, shall we? And let's check in with Natalia Wolf. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, like this will be a kind of a bit for kind of me and you, Holly, to like talk about. It's fair to say, isn't it, that in the year and a day since the events of the original Cincinnati Chronicles, the Prince has made it very clear, Prince Ludlow, that he is willing to offer sponsorship and support of all kinds to you and your coterie. I mean, obviously in exchange for your complicit silence in the embarrassing events of the original story. And I think it's fair to say Natalia has actually not particularly gone along with that, has she?
She hasn't outright refused it. She's been careful to not do that. But also she's not really too happy about being forced to receive it as well.
No.
So, yeah.
No, absolutely. And that's probably a bit of an awkward, it's kind of a persona non grata situation, right? You're not overtly being frozen out of things, but people have stopped talking to you. And when those people stop talking to you, other people stop talking to you. And now you're in a situation where maybe it doesn't feel immediately dangerous, or maybe it does, depending on your point of view. So, either way, we will pick up with you in Elysium. We are in the art museum, as many Elysiums are in Cincinnati. We were here in the last story. And Elysium is proceeding much as it has done for the last several months, more or less without you, despite your presence. Tonight is a display of many artists and musicians from the city of Cincinnati, some of them kindred and some of them merely sponsored or groomed by kindred. There are gatherings of the socially mobile members of the city's Camarilla all around, breaking off into separate rooms or gathering together to chat and laugh and gossip and plot. They all treat you with politeness, but no one will engage with you properly. Over at one side of the large museum room, your sire, 18, flashes a brief, embarrassed smile at you before turning and laughing at a joke made by the Toreador Primogen Evelyn Scripps. Elsewhere, you can see your former coterie mate Joan speaking with Prince Ludlow, with him nodding in careful consideration of something she is saying, no doubt a proposal that in some way benefits the Chantry. Next to her, Fen Koval stands, nodding along without real understanding, just happy to be able to dwell in his hideous skin in public for a few hours. Over to you.
Okay, I'm going to roll my eyes slightly at that conversation happening across the room. And then Seeing that no one's really that interested in talking to me, I'm gonna go up onto the balcony and just try and find somewhere to sit and ride out this evening until I'm no longer required to be around. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure. You can find a spot that, like you say, there is a balcony. It's near where some kind of musicians are playing. They're probably playing something like what would be something kind of cutting edge in the mid 90s in kind of Midwest America. I suppose something electronic would be quite new for that time in that period, or that place more so, I suppose. And there's a group of electronic musicians nearby playing something kind of orchestrally kind of inspired, and maybe your thing, maybe not your thing. It depends, I suppose. Yeah, you find a good position for kind of observing the movements of everyone. And you know what? While you're there, why don't you give me... It wouldn't be a World of Darkness adventure without a good old perception plus alertness roll, would it? So there we go. For anyone who needs just a reintroduction, you add stats together in the storyteller system and they produce a number of d10s. You roll those numbers of d10s, and you're trying to get over, in this case, a standard difficulty number of 7.
Cool. Well, I've got 2 successes, 2 10s, which is lovely. So.
Absolutely, that's great. In which case, as you're observing kind of the ebb and flow of kindred within Elysium there, one thing you do spot is you see Cole, your other coterie mate from a year ago. And unlike the others, he has actually spoken to you in the intervening period, and also seems to have more or less ignored the kind of proffered bribes, essentially, from the prince. Social bribes, I suppose. He is looking somewhat isolated as well, and as you are watching him, he kind of shakes his head to himself in sort of a gesture of what's the point, puts down his kind of slowly filled glass of blood and wanders out of the doors.
Cool. I'm gonna wait a beat to make sure that it doesn't look like we're going the same way, and
Sure,
then
yeah.
head out the same door.
Okay. You head out of the doors of Cincinnati's Art Museum, and I think we had the image of it the first time we did it. It's rather a grand, impressive building, and on the steps leading down. Halfway down them, you can see Cole kind of looking around across the street, which is, fairly busy. It's probably maybe kind of approaching midnight, so there's still traffic around, and obviously it's very well lit. You're in the city center here. But he's definitely kind of like standing, not noticeably waiting for you or anything, just kind of enjoying the sight of the city laid bare at night.
Cool. I'll go stand next to him and look at the same view.
Okay. Well, luckily we have the person who played Cole right here, so let's get involved with that. And you know what? I think for this we'll just snip the others out for a moment, shall we? There we go. Did we go ahead?
Cool. Yeah, so I'll come up and stand next to Cole and just like sigh slightly and say, "Beautiful evening to be invited out to the museum, isn't it?"
I thought the art would be your kind of thing.
Art, sure. That kind of nonsense, not really. It's all a bit flashy.
It's not as sociable as it used to be either, is it?
No, there's even for an undead, very much a cold atmosphere in there.
Do you want to go for a bit of a walk?
Yeah, I could use the fresh air. Not that I need to breathe.
I'm gonna wait until we're sort of a slightly respectable distance away from the museum before I say anything further. I think I could do with getting out of the city.
Yeah, that probably doesn't sound like a bad idea from someone in your position. Yeah, you've made your allegiances a lot more clear than me, and mine are not where they are expected to be. So, yeah.
What about
Do you need
then?
any help?
I could ask you the same thing.
I am probably okay at the moment. I doubt I will be much longer.
I've been talking to Honesty down at the Dirty Deeds. She said that she might be able to help. If you want to come along with, even if you don't want to follow straight away, it'll be good to know that there's a way out.
Well, if you can trust her, I can trust her. So, sure.
It's in the name, innit?
I wouldn't go around trusting names.
No, I know Honesty. You can trust her.
Cool. Yeah, I'm happy to go and chat at least.
Okay, well, it doesn't take too long for the two of you to head to the Dirty Deeds. You've both been there multiple times before. You've both spoken with Honesty a fair amount while you're there. You walk into the bar. It's kind of, on the low end of rough for a bar in Cincinnati, often frequented by Onyx. It's a low building, partially under the shelter of a roaring overpass, and as you walk in, you can see it's fairly empty in there for this time of night, apart from some drunks, a quietly intense game of poker in one corner. None of the individuals are kindred that you can see, other than Honesty herself behind the bar. She's wearing her kind of usual combat trousers, vest. Her hair is freshly dyed purpley red, and she definitely kind of raises her eyebrows at both of you walking in together, and then kind of nudges her ghoul to take care of the bar while she walks down at the even quieter end of it and sort of beckons for you to come over to her.
Cool. Yeah, I'll head over.
Funny seeing both of you in here. Or rather, funny seeing Cole bring someone else at the moment.
Yeah, things are getting a little bit cold in our circle.
See, that's ironic because I'd refer to what's on you as heat.
Yeah. I may have not made the right choice in turning down some of the prince's offers, but he's a bit of a dick, isn't he?
Well, that's the funny thing about Ludlow. He makes a lot of offers and conciliations and meet you halfways. And then, funnily enough, when you don't take him up on them, he ends up with everything, not halfway, right?
Yeah.
Look, I'll tell you the same thing I told Cole. Cole's been talking about getting out of it for years for his own reasons. If you feel, the moment you feel the heat is too big, that's the moment too late.
Yeah, probably.
Well, there's a guy, an Anak leader. He's an asshole, but I think you can rely on him in this particular case. I think you've met him, in fact. Name's Juggler.
Oh, him. Okay.
Yeah, that's how everyone says it. like I say, an asshole, but I think he just needs fresh meat. Chicago's seen a lot of trouble recently, and he needs some help to push things his way. We've got a new prince up there. I don't think he's playing nice with Juggler. He's bourgeois too, but no ordinary rabble like me or Mox or Juggler. He's more like Cole here, one of these fancy, learned, old-school types. Either way, he's giving Juggler shit, and the asshole needs backup. He's taking in anyone, either to Chicago or over to his home turf in Gary. If you're interested, I have a safe way to get there, but you gotta take it soon. Like, tomorrow. Next day, at most. There's a window of opportunity with a flight.
I'd say, do you have time for me to pack my luggage? And then I realise I don't have much. So I'm good to go whenever.
Cole, this is what you wanted.
I could do with tying a couple of things up, but...
Okay, like I say, tomorrow is good. Day after works. After that, we don't have access to this flight anymore. Someone owes someone a favor, private flight, small plane. You get the drill. It's pretty difficult to find pilots who are willing to take human cargo boxed up in the day.
Wolf, are you happy to wait for me?
Sure.
Day after tomorrow. Turn up at this bar as close as you can after sundown. Day after tomorrow.
Okay.
You can't take much stuff with you. Bring along any baggage you want. Look, I can... You get the fuck out of here. Go get your shit together. Say your goodbyes, get your stuff, whatever. I can maybe send some things on to you, but I'm only going to put my neck on the line so far. I stay where I can because I'm helpful to Mox without getting all up in Lolo's business. The moment that changes, I'm in deeper than I want to be. Just remember that you owe good old honesty one down the line, okay? And bring whatever you want, and if I can, I'll send it on.
Okay. Thank you.
That's what I'm here for. Apparently. Go on. Fuck off. Get your shit done.
Okay. Yeah, I'll head out. Yeah, and then I'll just nod to Cole before saying thanks for the help, and I'll shoot off home, I guess, to pack up my things.
Yeah, absolutely.
All my paint cans.
All your paint cans. And,
I'm not sure you should take those on a plane.
Probably not.
I'm probably not going to bring anything.
It might weirdly be okay at the height this plane is going to be flying. But either way, that's the end of our first scene. So let's roll back on with everyone else. And weirdly, it might be okay to have everyone in for this one. I don't know. We'll see. So, Chris, it's a year and a day later for the pack. And after repairing the van and leaving Cincinnati, the pack made it to the Sept of the Western Eye in California with relatively little excitement further. You spent the last year there as part of a negotiated sharing of knowledge and diplomacy between this Sept and the Sept of the Green. The Western Eye cairn itself is among the redwoods of Muir Woods outside San Francisco and is a generally calm and welcoming Sept run by the Children of Gaia and Uctina tribes in close collaboration. In the last year, you've learned a lot from local Garu, been entrusted with Sept tasks, allowed to participate in many rites, moots, and dangerous undertakings protecting the national parkland of the California coast. And we're going to open here with you waking in the cairn. I assume, because you're waking, I'm assuming you're going to be in Krenos form, in your kind of large man-wolf form. It's your natural form as a metis. You are surrounded by trees and the soft babbling of a gentle river. All of this central area of the cairn is sheltered inside a large hollow in the hillside. Your packmates are still asleep nearby. as you kind of come to consciousness, you recall that you have one of the guardian duties of the cairn this morning, and what that entails is essentially you have to go walk what's called the bourne, or the outer limit of the cairn. And given that this cairn is in Muir Woods, what that essentially means is you walk around this national parkland in a very kind of like certain way, making sure that tourists don't accidentally stumble into this Garou cairn. And also watching out for the worm and other things. But honestly, moment to moment, given the location of the cairn, what you are more than anything is a unpaid park ranger, trying to stop tourists from stepping off the wrong path. Yeah. Over to you.
I'll go and do my absolutions in the river, and sniff the fresh woodland air. And I suppose it's uncouth to do this in my breed form, so I'll probably I'll probably switch to lupus for this, I think.
They do in fact provide people, if they do want them, with ranger uniforms. Many of the members of the cairn and their kinfolk are actual park rangers for this state park.
Okay, well, in that case, I think, given the custom of the area, I will shift into accursed sausage meat mode and put on a park ranger uniform.
Absolutely. And then kind of head away from where everyone... It's not just your pack mates sleeping. Quite a lot of the Garou of the Cairn sleep in this particular area next to the stream. So I mean, you know where you have to go. Do you want to just head in that direction?
Yeah, I will give a kind of good morning whimper to the last watch of the night, which is probably still up and around. My ranger uniform is profoundly ill-fitting because Beanstalk is a profoundly ill-fitting person.
Very tall, very skinny, hence the name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you will set off on the trail which marks the boundary.
Absolutely. On your way to the way kind of towards the bourne of the cairn, you walk through a grove of ancient redwoods with what look like old bear markings partway up them. They're actually Garou glyphs signifying the hallowed heroes laid to rest beneath each tree. Beyond this is a twisting path splitting to vanish one way towards the still and peaceful center of the cairn, and the other towards the large rock that blocks the path from unwanted intruders. On top of the rock, kind of, which isn't a flat rock, it's sort of almost pointed and blocks the entire gully leading in, stands a Garou you know as Tim Rowantree, his ranger uniform open and showing a vividly multicolored tie-dye shirt. He's Children of Gaia. He's very, very large, bulky guy, but with a long blonde hair tied back in a ponytail. Looks to be in kind of early middle age in human terms. He's a very friendly individual and has made you feel very welcome. But you know from experience, kind of going out and dealing with things, he is certainly not a Garou you would like to be on the other side of a conflict from. He gives you a kind of cheery wave in the morning light. The boulder customarily is scrambled or leapt over, and kind of the Garou of the Cairn encourage people to learn how to do that. And you are long accustomed to the fact that you have to try this before you're helped over. So I'm assuming that's what we're going to try.
Oh, yes. And this is probably the one situation where my form is of good use because I'm such a lanky fool that such trivial bouldering will be pretty straightforward, I hope.
You know what? I'm actually going to drop the difficulty for you because you're so tall, right? And I'm going to say it's strength plus athletics, difficulty 5, but you need 3 successes.
Oh, I gotta 100% this. Oh, 1 failure.
1 failure.
So, sorry. Yeah, out of 3 dice, so that was a fail overall.
In that case, I'm going to say you kind of, you know, when you're kind of scrabbling up to something, you're almost there, and then you feel yourself kind of like slipping back. As you do that, Tim Rowentree's arm like extends out lightning fast for you to grab onto if you want.
Yeah, I'm not a proud person, and Tim's a nice lad.
Sure. He grabs you and kind of pulls you up, saying, "Nearly. You get
Nearly.
in there. Look, be watchful, kid. The tourists wander off the paths more and more every day in the summer, all right?"
Now, is he speaking in human or is he speaking in Garu?
He's speaking in human.
Okay.
English. Yeah.
Actually, do you know what? I'll reply in Garu because I can.
That's fine.
I will do my utmost. It seems a nice morning anyway.
Yeah. Well, having a walk clears the head nicely in the morning. Try and have fun out there, man. Don't get too bored.
Nothing around here is boring. Thank you, my friend.
He waves you a cheery goodbye. You head out and, you're wandering kind of up hills, down valleys. Every so often you directly cross a path and there are kind of tourists and hikers out here, even at this time in the morning. Some of the humans kind of camp out in specially designated areas. And it's only a few times that you find yourself kind of exhausted and infuriated at kind of finding rubbish that's been discarded, or perhaps even blown from far away from the cities that are a little bit too close even here for your liking. You have to kind of occasionally make sure a tourist group or a hiker sticks to the paths, or at least away from the bourne of the cairn. Is there anything you're particularly doing to try and kind of entertain yourself during all this, or are you just trying to focus on the job at hand?
I think I'll be picking up some litter.
Sure. Yeah. Have you got anything to put it in? Do you carry
I
anything?
don't, so it's going to kind of be awkwardly stuffed into my pocket, so eventually I'm going to run out of pocket space and look a little bit. Maybe what I'll do is palm it off on some helpful looking tourist.
Kind of tell them to take it to a bin, sort of thing. Yeah, sure. Let's see how well you manage to do that. Can you give me a what role do you think you'd do for that?
Are we in manipulation turn?
Yeah, manipulation's fine. Yeah. Or charisma, I think.
I think it's more of charisma. I think it's charisma plus survival is a stretch.
Like, the things I could think of, anything to do, like, there isn't a persuasion stat, is there? But, like, there's, like, etiquette and empathy.
Yeah, no, I think charisma plus etiquette, I was going to say.
Sure, yeah. Go for it.
So
go for it. I think someone out hiking is more likely to do it than anyone else. So I'm going to give you a difficulty 7. Yeah.
That's one success, yeah.
Yeah, sure. You find you stumble across a small family where the mother and the father are kind of hefting a couple of kids with them and kind of telling them how you have to respect the wilderness and the state parks and take care of them and stuff like that. And you capitalize on them guilt tripping their children to guilt trip the parents into kind of taking some rubbish home with them. The father doesn't look particularly happy, but does leave with his pockets stuffed full of kind of candy wrappers and crisp packets. Crossing the Atlantic with my terminology there. After a couple of hours of this, you are kind of standing, taking a brief pause, kind of looking around you. You can see rolling down from where you are, kind of like you're high up enough on the slope of a hill that the tops of some redwoods are kind of flush down in the valley from where you are, and you're kind of enjoying briefly standing and watching the wind kind of rustle through the canopies of these redwoods. When you know what? Give me a good old, actually maybe Primal Urge is better. Give me a Wits plus Primal Urge roll, please. Difficulty. Let's say it's difficulty 8. No. In that case, you are somewhat startled when a voice behind you says, "How is your morning, O wandering pup?"
Was that in English?
No, it was in Garu.
You startled me. Thank you.
Well, you see an individual called March Lion approaching you. He is wearing park ranger gear. He's a small, wiry Native American guy who you know as the Banekeeper, among other roles within the Sept of the Western Eye. You've gone along pretty well with him, to the point of kind of like sharing a lot of kind of the ideas of where you want to go and where you want to travel and the reasons for doing so, where you might not tell other people or other Garu who are a little more traditional in their viewpoints, let's say. Yeah. But anyway, he asked you how your morning was.
It was good. It was good. It is a delightful morning.
I find the morning light the best here on the coast. I don't know.
It weighs on me somewhat that I'll be leaving soon.
I actually came to discuss something of that with you. What we talked about before, your particular interest that might not be entertained well in other septs. The Ferrer.
Gaia's other limbs, yes.
This raven you spoke of. You're leaving soon and looking for a direction, I think. The Sept of the Green is an already trodden path, no?
Yes, quite, and might not lead to... Look, the Green, I love them all. They are my family, my found family, but they are not so fussed if I choose a different path. And is it not my calling to choose a different path?
Why would anyone choose to tie your tribe down? There's another cairn. We know of them at the Green. We know of them at the Western Eye. Far to the north and the east. The Sept of the Winter Wolf. Travel the roads to Toronto and beyond. To a town called Croder's Pass. Then off and away into the woods. I wouldn't want to spoil the fun of a silent strider by telling him exactly where to go. His eyes kind of twinkle with a slight mirth.
Cairn of the Winter Woods. Excellent. Thank you.
Sept of the Winter Wolf is what he said. Just
Sept of the Winter Wolf. Oh my
fine.
goodness.
It's
It was
fine.
literally
It's fine.
10 seconds before.
He gives a nod. Just be respectful of the Wendigo when you find them. Younger brother has a hot temper to keep him warm in the ice and snow. And then, when you have proved your worth to them, ask after Bill. He can teach you of the Ferrer plenty. Oh yes, he can.
Thank you for this path. I will tread it in wisdom.
Well, enjoy all that ice and snow yourself. I will be enduring the terrors of another California summer.
Well, there'll be fewer tourists up north if we're lucky.
I better let you go and persuade the rest of your pack to go with you, eh? Still got that van.
Yeah.
He pats you on the back in a friendly fashion and wanders off. And unless you want to take final action, that's the end of the scene. But go ahead if you want to add something else to the end of it.
I'll carry on my circuit, but now very much more introspective than before.
Excellent. Okay, then. There we go. So, Mage. Carolyn Zelrich. What has happened in the last year and a day? Well, it's pretty straightforward, honestly. Attending Narentus University is entirely voluntary once one has been accepted or sponsored. So it's up to the individual student if any events have prompted you to leave. You and I think all the other members of your circle have indicated that's not the case. Although I'm writing out one of them because the person who plays them said occasionally they go away for weeks at a time. And I was like, well, then you're gone now because that will just reduce complexity. So John's character is not there, but all the others are. There's nothing like an actual course or qualification or syllabus at Narentus University. It's just a place of learning where things are taught, and it's entirely up to you what to take from that. So there's no kind of like finals or course you have to do or any sort of thing like that. You are still at Narentus. Things have likely been quite calm and boring in the wake of the events in Cincinnati. Shortly after you came back, Professor Cray left on sabbatical, telling all of you that he needed to further investigate the mysterious green-robed mage responsible for the events. Occasionally, you've received communication from him in the form of an email, because he is a virtual adept. I don't know how much you are using email in the mid-90s at this point as non-virtual adepts, but for what it's worth, it seemed like he was struggling to find any information. The last email was about 3 months ago, when he said he might be on the verge of a breakthrough via an awakened contact he had made called William Hooker. So with that in mind, Carolyn, we join you walking out of a class or a lecture of some kind at Narentus University into a corridor kind of teeming with both other mages, constructs of those mages, various weirdnesses and abstractisms that you'd find on the corridors of Narentus University. You are accompanied by every member of your circle, apart from John's character, right? So as well as Carolyn Zelrech here, we have Chris's character, who was called
Charlie,
and Holly's character, who is called
Mira, I think.
Mira, yeah.
So there we go. So Charlie and Mira are with you. You're just wandering out of the class, an average class, and let's say it was focused around. Now I have to remember the order. It was a class focused on forces, taught by one of the Order of Hermes here at Narentus University. So all about the elements and the manipulation thereof. Having said that, it wasn't like a big, kind of wizard franchise fireball thing. It was much more about how to tweak physics than anything else. So,
Yeah. Oh man, that was. I enjoyed that. Maybe I could work out how to launch myself in a sort of beautiful arc. I just wish the lectures were a bit more, hands-on, a bit more, practical. I don't like sitting still so much. How about you, Mira? You look a little dour.
Vil, my raven, is just going to be circling over your head, just repeating, boring, boring, boring. And I'm just going to nod and go, yeah, and you summed it up. That was... I could cover all that in a book.
Yeah.
Practice is foolish without theory.
Sure, but they could make the theory interesting,
It is interesting. It's just interesting in a really boring way.
Yeah.
A voice behind you all as you're having this conversation says, "Students, if I could have a moment." You find yourself being addressed by a professor you're all familiar with, a senior tutor of the Prime Sphere here at Narentus called Akosua, who is, she's quite short, quite slight, has kind of very tightly curled black hair and wears a very almost 80s style large shoulder pad power suit, right? And the only kind of decoration is quite a large silver crucifix around her neck.
Oh, Akosua, it's good to see you again. I will. Charlie will kind of make a far too elaborate kind of like bow type situation.
Yes. Well, to my rooms, please. She turns around without kind of checking if you're following her and just starts walking.
I'll sort of reluctantly drag my heels after, knowing that this person is she's a bit of a stick in the mud. So,
oh yeah.
I'm like, this is not my kind of person.
Yeah, Mira's just going to like lock eyes with you and just raise an eyebrow in a.
Yeah.
So you follow Akosua into her offices. When you arrive, you can see there's some seating in front of an austere wooden desk. The only decoration in the room is a large, simple wooden cross mounted to the wall behind the desk, and the light entirely comes from a large window facing out on an endless bright blue sky of white clouds that the university is suspended in as part of a far cloud realm of the Umbra. She closes the door behind you. There is nothing to worry about for you. I would like you to tell me everything you know about the whereabouts of Professor Cray. Please. She rounds the desk and kind of sits down and leans back in it with a creak.
Has something happened?
Please.
I mean, Charlie, did you get any? Last I heard, it was like 3 months ago. You checked the computers, right, Charlie?
Yeah.
It would be the most likely, I suppose. Yeah.
Actually, now you mentioned it, it's been a while since we've heard from him.
Yeah, he was on. He was investigating that green robe fellow, and
The Cincinnati situation.
yeah, he suggested he had some sort of lead or something, but it had gone quiet. I can't remember the name. It was like William.
What was the name?
Perhaps you can look it up.
I see. So you last heard from him 3 months ago. You say it was concerning the Cincinnati situation. Could you elaborate on what that is?
Weird wizards made a bunch of stuff go insane down in Cincinnati, captured a bunch of wraiths. We had to run away very quickly because it was obviously very powerful. Professor Cray stopped him as we were going through the door, and that's the last we saw of it.
Well, while Mira is saying this, towards the end, I'm like,
If I had one wish, it would be that the younger traditions, she kind of glances at Charlie as she says this, because you are Order of Ether, right?
Yeah, tangentially, yeah.
Yeah. Kind of glances at Charlie and says, had some respect for the power structures in place, such as, for example, reporting an example of an extraordinarily powerful potential nemesis of the traditions to Narentus University faculty before leaving on sabbatical to take care of it himself.
I thought that
You thought.
we thought that he thought
You
that.
thought. This does not sound positive. Do you have any concerns for his safety?
10 minutes ago, I didn't.
Well, things have come to light amongst the faculty that give us pause as to the reasons for his sabbatical. We feel he may have gotten into some trouble and been unable to extricate himself. There is no need for further concern from yourselves. This information has been most helpful. We may wish to talk to you again. We will see to Cray's return in one piece. You may return to your studies, which I have been informed are most satisfactory. That will be it.
I leave the room and I'm sort of shaking my head to myself. I'm like, I hope he's all right.
Yeah, that didn't sound great.
Why didn't they tell each other?
No, but look, it's academics. They don't communicate. What?
And Will's always, he's looked after himself. I'm sure this is just a big misunderstanding. And I sort of shiftily look off to the side, definitely not believing my own line.
Yeah, Charlie's gone about 6 shades paler since the start of being able to talk to his favorite lecturer.
Sure. Off to future classes or study or things of that nature, just with a lot more stress and worry on your shoulders, I assume.
Yeah, but I think also Carolyn is like starts packing a very small travel bag for immediate. Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. Well, we will draw a veil over our mages for the moment, just there, and move on to our Wraith character. Now, at the beginning, folks, when I said I'm going to read some stuff out, Wraith is exactly what I had in mind, because I feel like we have to, unlike the others, perhaps we have to talk about what happened directly after the end of the conclusion of our Wraith storyline, right? So, picking up exactly where we left off. First, there was only the storm for the longest time, long enough that an existence before the storm seemed impossible, and the raging winds and howling forces within it almost became a restless comfort. You could have just let go and drifted forever into the calm you knew lay at the center of it all. But before that could happen, you fell. You didn't know how long for, and when you landed, your relationship with the concepts of time and space did not improve. You were somewhere deep and dark and hungry, and somehow you feel you always knew that this place was down here, a labyrinth below the world, a maze of torments where your past, present, and future colluded to wrangle your soul into awful shapes. Your passions and emotions were laid bare there, flensed on the crucible of your being, until you could almost see yourself as a map of everything that had ever made you, a linked constellation of people and places and things coming together to form the spark of life you once were. But these are just impressions, flashes. What actually happened? Who did you talk to? Who did you flee from? Who did you tear apart in a screaming rage of futility? You don't know. Forever ago, you tore yourself free from the labyrinth, and now you just drift here in shades of darkness with a slowly increasing sense of motion. Ahead, there is a light. It is growing. It is pulling you in with a force far greater than gravity. Should this excite you, relieve you, terrify you? Probably all three. You are almost there. Just reach out with everything you have left and hold on. I would say you have enough consciousness to do or prepare in some way yourself for reaching the light. Doesn't have to be anything. It definitely won't be anything as coherent as, a die roll or like using an arcane or something like that. What is your reaction to this?
I think there is a moment of doubt because everything I've read has said that when you're dead, don't go into the light.
Sure.
And then I think there is a resolution that if I was going to give up, I would have given up a long time ago.
Mm-hmm. And I think somewhere within yourself as well, you are 100% certain that whatever oblivion might be like, it's not a light. So the light lasts for an eternity, and then you awaken, slumped on your knees in the rubble of soul steel and relic iron. The familiar lack of sensation from the shadowlands around you, everything hazy in the half-light of death. There is almost nothing but wreckage and dust surrounding you in the choked detritus of what was once the citadel of Cincinnati's hierarchy. There are no restless in sight at all, but where once it would have been difficult to perceive the skinlands in this potent Shadowlands fortress, now you can see the shadows of the quick going about their daily business, walking through streets and buildings with no awareness whatsoever of the bleak landscape that lies under their plane of existence. In the distance, there are flashes of lightning, the lingering symptoms of the maelstrom still battering away at the walls of the Shadowlands here. There is no noise but the whistling of a sharp wind. You are alone.
I am going to... There is no remnants of the race that I would expect. So I'm going to go in search of something that reminds me of life.
Okay.
I'm going to try and find my niece.
Okay.
Who's also a fetter.
Yeah. So kind of trying to get bearings on where you might be in Cincinnati through the glimpses you can catch of the Skinlands here, and making your way towards a place you might recognize of.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. To do that, you've got to start crawling over a hell of a lot of this piled rubble. Could you give me, please, your choice of strength or dexterity plus athletics roll, standard difficulty, to see how you fare kind of crossing this mass of wrecked and twisted metal and rubble?
That's a botch.
That is a botch. Okay. In that case, Abby, you try and clamber to the top of what seems to be a fairly traversable scree of this relic iron and soul steel, only to find it giving kind of way beneath the weight of your corpus, or what passes for weight of what a corpus has, and it crashes down in an incredibly loud cataclysm of steel on iron, sending you sprawling across kind of more rubble and metal and bits of stone. Do you want to give me a can't even remember if wraiths have soak rolls? They've got to, right? So can you just give me a stamina roll and see how you do?
That's 2 successes.
Okay, can you remove 1 corpus, please? You feel part of your wraith self kind of drift away on that sharp whistling wind, and you kind of attempt to sort of kind of scrabble up to your feet, and as you do so, you hear a vaguely familiar woman's voice saying, "One still must be careful, even now. This place is dangerous."
Who's there?
Are you kind of taking a look around carefully?
Yeah.
Okay. Sat on a large stone nearby is the I don't know what we would call her, the factor and businesswoman Urania, who you negotiated your way through the walls of the citadel by granting her a gift. Her dress is far more torn and tattered and stained than before, and she wears a binding of rotten cloth across her crystalline eyes. Nearby rests a featureless wooden mask and a shattered soul steel blade, bearing mute witness to the fate of her hulking henchman. In her hands, she still holds the silver pocket watch, running her fingertips over it with a thoughtful expression on her face.
How long have you been here?
A long time, I think. I was one of the few not torn apart by the storm, but it did things to me, showed me things. It has been a long time. A long time. I know you.
Yeah. You helped me get into the city.
I knew many people once. But they drift away. They are at the edge of my thoughts, like moths to be caught. The maelstrom took everything. Only a few restless were left. The others dragged to harrowings or oblivion. The beast at the centre of the storm was driven back by the ferryman. That is my guess. I didn't see or hear it after the storm finally died, after hours or days or weeks. I crawled from my wreckage to this. How is it you are here? You did not seem to have the strength to crawl from the labyrinth, but maybe you did.
I'm not sure. But I wasn't, and now I'm here.
It doesn't matter, I suppose. The hierarchy is gone. Survivors fleeing from rampaging renegades, predatory spectres. No one comes to the Citadel. I am staying here until it is time to leave. She holds forth the pocket watch as an indicator of her measurement of time. It is noticeably completely broken.
You said that you saw something in the storm.
Yes. The winds, the maelstrom parted and I saw it. And I have not seen anything since.
Would you mind if I just would you mind letting me in?
In where?
In to show me what you saw.
I do not feel possessive over that memory. But it is not a good idea. When I saw it, it took my eyes. If you glimpsed it with your mind, what would it do to you?
That's a good point.
You should go. You should go, so you are not tempted. Try to remain safe. I would prefer it if you were not torn apart.
Thank you. Same to you.
She started humming a tune as you pass and stride across the wreckage away from her. A tune you don't think you could ever name, but you somehow think you've definitely heard before in some dim and distant past. I think we will draw a veil over the Wraith there for now. That's enough super bleakness. Let's go to the Changeling, which is a bit less intense. So the past year has felt like a new golden age for the Cathane of Cincinnati. In the wake of the return of the Azure Knight, Lady Marcella's favour has once again fallen on the Knights of the Golden Trail. Many young changelings have enlisted as squires, and the Knights of the Order have returned one after the other, called back to Loveland Castle by the unexpected return of Sir Marshall. The Sealy Court has been in full swing with one merry event after the other. A regular market has sprung up in the ruins of the old card factory, reclaimed from the evil sorceries and intents it harboured only recently. The ladies' favours have fallen on our beloved motley of characters. Marcella clearly delighted at Marshall's return and has offered you great and grand rewards. A knighthood was offered to all of you. No small thing at all, and likely something the grumps and cynics of court frowned upon as a bit excessive, as well as patronage of any arts, crafts, or other services you can offer. A happy and joyous time, aside from the usual petty infighting at court such a disruption provokes. The Sluagh mutter and mumble to themselves that such times never last and the other shoe must drop. But when are they ever content? No, no, all is well and will remain so in the freehold of Fontainebleau. Rhea, tonight, as is so often these days, is a night of feasting and making merry at the Chateau of Fontainebleau within Marcella's freehold. There is a busy market, dancing, spiced food and chilled drinks, music from a travelling band of Ishu bards, and displays of gallantry from the Knights of the Golden Trail. The evening's jousting has come to a close, and now the grand melee begins. With dulled blades and blunt instruments, knights and squires batter away at each other. Concerned, and some, it has to be said, cynically disapproving, healers stand at the ready for anyone beaten too senseless, and a raised wooden platform coiled with summer flowers stands overlooking the melee field. Marcella and the Azure Knight at the front and centre on large matching wooden chairs. Marshall mostly watches the melee with enthusiasm, loudly cheering and clapping for any individual, especially the squires, who hold themselves well against their opponents. He seems to value those surpassing themselves more than actual victories. Marcella is also politely observing and grants warm smiles to those leaving the field after being beaten, but is also spending a not inconsiderable amount of time gazing at the open and smiling face of the Azure Knight. Next to them is a large wooden box with one side open towards the festivities. Inside is a large and somewhat plump brown rabbit with white swan wings, very happily munching on a copious amount of vegetables. On the other side, in an elaborately decorated leather tunic, sits Briar, the former squire, with a wide smile on her face from her victory at the jousting tourney. One arm is in a hastily applied sling, but she seems to be in complete ignorance of the pain. Rhea, what are you doing? And if you answer, I'm in the melee, that's fine, and we'll find out what happens.
I think she's been chatting people up a bit here and there, and I think probably given Rhea did accept the knighthood from Lady Marcella. So I think if a challenge was laid down to her to join the melee, she 100% took up that challenge and gave it a good go. So
well, let's find out how you did. For anyone who's unaware, a melee is it's not exactly a tournament. It's basically everyone participating goes into one bound of the melee field, and we're talking battle royale. We're talking Royal Rumble here, folks. Only not without obviously the specific Royal Rumble entrance rules. Everyone just hitting each other until one person is left standing, right? Might break out into little individual fights, but it is chaos, especially at the beginning. Let's find out how Rhea did in the grand melee. Can you give me, please, a stamina plus melee roll for how you did? And it's going to be a difficulty of 7, and your number of successes shows us how far you got.
Difficulty 7. I have 2 dice to roll for this. This is definitely not her strength, but she just can't say no to the challenge.
Sure, absolutely.
No successes.
Okay, that's fine. But
she's having fun, and that's the main thing.
Exactly, Rhea. You're not a skilled combatant. You're not the first out of the field, but you're pretty close. You end up being kind of like whacked over the back of the head. You're not even sure who hit you, to be perfectly honest. But you're whacked over the back of the head and find yourself kind of stumbling and falling and catching yourself. And basically one of the healers from the side, a disapproving Boggin who seems very disappointed that someone should be so irresponsible who doesn't know what they're doing and walked into this, kind of drags you off the field, sort of comforting you and haranguing you at the same time. You do kind of look over and see Sir Marshall on the platform, who gives you a kind of bright smile and kind of raises a clap as you leave. Clearly very fond of you from from what you've done for him and for the freehold. The Boggin sits you down and kind of like tuts and fusses over you and makes sure you're all right.
Yeah, I will, in very good spirits, accept the slightly grumpy healing efforts while like very enthusiastically continuing to watch the rest of the melee kind of carrying on, giving out a good
Absolutely.
cheer for people, and very very much a like it's like very into the drama of everything
Absolutely.
that's playing out.
Well, let me tell you, it is quite the entertaining and violent chaos. As it proceeds, the combatants are whittled down one by one until, in the end, the victor stands, having knocked aside a troll large enough to rival Marshall in size. She's kind of like battered down first to one knee and then knocked on her back by an individual in odd kind of like mismatched gray metal armor, who people kind of like whisper about and point. They're not quite sure who it is until they remove their helm and reveal themselves to be a barely recognizable but still recognizable red cap you've bumped into a few times, wearing a beanie firmly under their helm. It is the red cap who guarded your entrance in a very surly manner from a similar event in the last story. He is cheering and gnashing his teeth in celebration. And when a prize is offered, he requests the honor of a mock duel against the Azure Knight in order to prove himself further. Marshall gets to his feet, accepts with delight and enthusiasm, steps down, and moments later, the duel is over. Rather quickly, in all honesty, but the red cap manages to hold back the implacable advance of the towering troll for a good 30 seconds or so, certainly more than most could manage. And at the end, a battered but grinning red cap is helped back to his feet by the Azure Knight, and then lifted and carried aloft by many Cathane around the festival. For future reference, as you learn soon after, because he's the talk of the event, his name is Grumbo.
That is fantastic. Grumpo.
So what are you getting up to after the melee closes? Any of the other character, the rest of the motley that you want to interact with, apart from Chris's character, who's kind of sort of vanished away from Sealy Court Society a bit, but John and Holly's character are available and are here if you wish to interact with them in any way.
I might go up to Holly's character, whose name has escaped me.
Roshin.
Yeah, and will just say, I thought you would have had a little trick or two up your sleeve to help me along there.
I would have tried, but it was a bit chaotic. I gave you a nice little soundtrack, though. Did you enjoy it?
Oh, it was you.
Yeah, so throughout the entire melee, Roshin will have just been strumming on the tiniest ukulele imaginable. Extremely high-pitched, and if anything, more annoying than encouraging. But yeah.
I love that she's like 20 years ahead of the curve on the annoying little ukulele trend. Really good. Well, let's have a little bit of what has that character been up to, right? What has Roshin been up to over the course of the night?
Irritating most people at court. Yeah, people occasionally catch her thieving stuff, but otherwise mostly just providing slightly irritating atmospheric music and rude poetry that I'm sure delights Lady Marcella. Not the same for a good portion of her court, but yeah.
You have a few times caught Lady Marcella giggling despite herself at some of your obscene infantile pranks and jests. So you think there is more to the fact, more than just her sponsorship and patronage to the fact that she enjoys having you around.
Cool. I'm going to offer Rhea a lollipop while we're talking.
will happily accept.
Okay, is there anything else? Don't knock your bed over. Is there anything else that you anyone else you wish to talk to? Anything else you wish to see more closely at the festival as the evening proceeds? No is fine. We'll just run through this until you're sort
I'll
of
say yeah,
satisfied.
we're probably just doing the rounds a bit and chatting to people, soaking up this, the atmosphere and the stories and things. If I don't know, like if we how much we'd have still like seen people like Marshall and like chatted to them, but might have a bit of a chat with a bit of the kind of play by
Sure,
play of the melee and just
sure. I
enjoy some
mean,
of the
Marshall's a busy
atmosphere.
lad, but he always finds time for you, certainly.
Isn't he great?
Yeah, even at he spends obviously a lot of time at Loveland Castle, but a lot of time at court as well. And yeah, you can definitely catch a few words with him. He claps you on the back, says, "You are improving, Rhea. I know sometimes all of us feel that we are not, but you are improving. And if you ever need more tutelage, come to the castle, come to Loveland. I will help you."
That's wonderful. Yeah, I definitely don't get too much practice in the sort of melee scenario. I gotta confess, I haven't been doing as much practice as I maybe should have done, but it's usually one-on-one. But I'll get there.
Come to Loveland. We'll put you in with the squires. A few weeks later, you'll be in with the knights. I promise. Okay. Take it easy. He gives you a very friendly and familiar pat on the shoulder and is off into the crowd with 1,000 other people demanding his attention.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, and I'll similarly carry on sort of mingling my way around.
Mm-hmm. As you do so, I would feel truly remiss if I didn't mention that as you're wandering around near the podium, you hear a voice going, "Oh, jolly good performance! Jolly good performance in the melee. I'm sorry, this is quite the chewy carrot." It is Eddie, the Chimera, who I have already mentioned. And for anyone completely lost at the mention of that, Eddie is a large, brown, plump rabbit with swan wings.
Oh, thanks. Chewy carrot, you say?
Delightfully chewy. Very well provisioned tonight. Very well provisioned. There is a loud crunch.
Oh, good. Yeah. Crunchy. Yeah, good.
Anyway, well done. You were one of the finalists, weren't you?
If you were looking at it the wrong way, back to front.
I wasn't looking at it
No.
at all, to be honest with you. I had some very intriguing celery at the time.
That's very understandable. No, but I think I did very well for myself, and it was very good fun. And in that way, I was a finalist. But you probably had a better time eating the celery than seeing my performance, to be perfectly honest.
Oh, you do yourself. I'm sure you do yourself down. Excuse me. This is so good. He seems thoroughly enthralled in his vegetables.
It's just nice to see somebody so happy. What a good day at court.
Crunch. Chew.
Is Eddie like a regular sort of feature here?
Yes, Eddie now
Very
seems
much
to
so,
spend
yeah.
more time at perhaps at court than he does at Loveland Castle. He certainly seems to no longer be essentially imprisoned underneath Loveland Castle. But yeah, he's kind of a
Okay.
fixture. Lady Marcella has taken to a shine to him after he kept bringing Marshall kept bringing Eddie to court as a treat for his help in setting him free. And then Marcella took a shine to him and found him really adorable and amusing. And now he can't come to court without bringing Eddie. So everyone's
Okay.
stuck with him whether they like it or not, is what I'm saying.
I see, gotcha. Well, knowing this, perhaps I even have like a sneaky carrot in my pocket somewhere. Maybe this is a regular little expectation these days.
Oh, Lady Rhea, you really sugar. God, it's such cognitive dissonance moving from Wraith to this, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure, Eddie.
Okay, there we go. As you, the evening is progressing now. It's midnight passes. Marcella stands on a very elaborate-looking lawn chair, announces to the court at large that she is retiring for the evening after a long day of celebration. Others are remaining singing, dancing, and carousing as the early hours pass. Most of the order also leaves with Marshall, but you are free to kind of like stay or come. Both of those groups kind of leave before you even get a chance to. But are you staying for much longer, or are you looking to head away from the more seriously drinking crowd?
No, be there for the serious, the serious part of the party
drinking.
too.
And how drinking drunk do you get? Do you like? Are you at the state where you're stumbling away from the party at 3 or 4 in the morning, or are we
I think so, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So we reached that time. You've seen quite a few people, you've maybe spent time with that band of Eshu bards as well, sharing tales and various things like that. And then at the end, later on in the night, you find yourself stumbling through the gate from Fontainebleau into the Highland Garden, happily whistling a tune and walking through the garden on your path home. And we'll draw a line there and go right back to Vampire. So, because everyone's going, well, these stories don't seem to be converging at all. Holly, Natalia Wolf, as we could imagine, is at her haven, right? Packing up stuff, okay, to take with her on this flight, in two senses of the word, to Chicago. Why don't you give us a quick description of what your haven's like?
So Natalia lives in essentially an abandoned warehouse in the kind of factory district of Cincinnati. She's converted the office space upstairs into kind of a bedroom. There isn't really much in there that would make it a bedroom other than technically a place to sleep, which she doesn't do much of anyway. And the entire downstairs of this warehouse is just covered with graffiti because it's like her test canvas, so that there are paint cans everywhere. It's a mess. But,
so there is like upper converted rooms, like into a sort of like a studio loft or whatever, and then this big area downstairs where you can just go wild.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm going to say about 70% of the windows are smashed. So
yeah. I mean, presumably not the ones where you sleep, because that would
no. The ones where I sleep, there aren't any windows. It's ideal for a vampire.
Like an old storage room up in the manager's office.
Even a normal office is unlikely to have windows.
Sure, like on one of the with a corrugated iron roof and stuff, right? And
exactly.
Sure. Yeah. While you are doing that, then you are in a room kind of pulling together various things. What are you doing have you got a literal suitcase or just like a rucksack?
I've literally got like a duffel bag that I've stuffed some clothes in, and I'm now like writing a hasty kind of cryptic note to the one person who I really know in the city.
So let's say that these upper rooms, right, there's this old kind of like space that you use as like the place where you sleep. There's maybe a room where you store a lot of your paints and stuff. And then there's maybe a room with like, I think you mentioned like when we talked about it, like a couch where you'd receive anyone who might visit. Maybe old coterie mates at one time, your sire, people like that. So these kind of 3 rooms. And then there's like a gantry outside that leads down to the main space. You are in your kind of the place where you sleep, kind of stuffing some extra clothes into your duffel bag. You hear what definitely sounds like a thump coming from the next room, like a soft. You can't tell what it is. Could be like a footfall or something falling or something being wrapped on or something like that.
I'm immediately going to shoot over to a doorway and kind of hide partially in the corridor to wait until whatever it is moves so that I can figure out whether it's a threat.
Okay. You lurk there for a few seconds, and there is silence. And then you hear the distinct sound again, but a little louder, coming from a room further away.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to go investigate. I might as well. This is my house, so
Sure.
for the next day. Yeah.
Stealthily along, sort of, yeah. You make it probably to like the next room along. We call it. Do we want it to be a corridor or like a gantry over the warehouse?
Probably like a gantry, yeah.
Yeah. You make it partway down, kind of almost up to like the first doorway where you first thought you heard the sound, and you hear a voice coming from behind you, probably the room you first came from, saying, "Natalia, will you get up? You're going to be late for school." It is unmistakably your mother's voice.
Okay.
It's entirely up to you how that makes you feel. I don't know
immediate suspicion.
what your relationship with you is, your mother, or her status, or anything like that. You can take anything you want from that.
Immediate suspicion. So, fully going into like hunter mode now. I'm gonna dip down, try and get a view on where I heard the noise coming from.
Sure.
Still trying to be stealthy where possible.
Okay. You take a few stealthy, quick strides over to the room where you came from, and are you kind of like looking into it? There might even be some like inner windows there that you can like peek over.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The room is empty. And at the point where you register that, you hear another voice. This is the voice of 18, your sire, echoing from somewhere down in the warehouse. Look, I know it sucks, but sometimes they just die even if you don't drain them. You got to just deal with it.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so this isn't real. So she's just gonna, I guess, try and open the door to the main warehouse and see where that initial thump came from.
Right, kind of
because that might be what's causing it.
Right, well, you first heard it, you think maybe someone's fucking with you, someone's playing with your mind.
Exactly. So
Vampires
quite angrily, she's going to open the door.
Yeah. You slam open the door. There is nothing untoward in here. And a voice that comes from further down the gantryway from where you are. It sounds like the Toreador Primogen, Evelyn Scripps. I don't know, dear. It just seems a bit extreme and yet passe at the same time.
She's going to like wrinkle her nose slightly at that memory. And then, like, I don't know, look over the gantryway and just check that there's no one in the warehouse, but it doesn't seem like there's anyone around. So, yeah.
You can't see anyone. Another voice from the room behind you, the one you're facing away from that you just investigated as being empty. A voice you heard once from a person whose name you don't even know, that brings back perhaps a memory more ridden with guilt than anything else. Stay away from me. Please, monsters aren't real.
Okay. At that one, she's going to like almost recoil slightly. Recoil at first and then like angrily barge back into wherever her bedroom is and just like sit on the sofa, head in hand, trying to block it all out.
Sure. You kind of collapse onto the sofa, which is kind of like basically kind of it's next to like a window that's sort of, it's still intact and it isn't boarded up. You've just kind of pinned some drapes over the top of it. And from behind the window, and this is definitely the voice, the location of which you can pin most down precisely. A voice from behind the other side of the window, which is probably, 10 meters or more up in the air. There is no way anyone can stand outside it. The voice outside, again, a voice you only heard a few times, a voice whose memory you associate with blood and fire and the reason why you are where you are now. A voice saying, I still can't say his name. Whatever it is on the other side of that window.
Is it daytime?
No, it's night. You would be asleep if it's daytime.
Okay, I'm gonna basically launch myself through the window. I'm pissed off at this point.
Sure. I would note that you would be, if there's nothing there, you would be plummeting a great. It's that you still do it, but
no, I'm basically gonna try and punch through the window.
Right, you're like
attacking
it, sort of. Your fist strikes through the drapes and the glass, which shatters apart. The drapes are kind of pulled down with the rage of your blow, and you hear something. Not a voice this time, but the loud tolling of a bell. And there beyond the window, floating in what seems like a dark void of the Cincinnati night, is an indistinct figure in green robes. He reaches for you. And let's move to Werewolf. Chris.
It's going to be a very quick mini-series.
The van has broken down again. With a similar crunching and refusal to start as a year ago in the streets of Cincinnati. But now, instead of Cincinnati, the pack is in Mount Tamalpais State Park, only an hour or two from the Sept of the Western Eye. One side of the road is a rugged bare hilltop, the other a rolling forest in hills and valleys as far as the eye can see. Off to the west is the glittering Pacific. It's warm and pleasant, but frustrating. In the distance, another vehicle can be heard, but whether it's heading in this direction or not is pretty uncertain. Every one of your other packmates is here, so anyone who played a werewolf is more than welcome to contribute to the initial part of this scene. But Chris, what is Beanstalk doing?
Thank goodness we can finally run.
Sure.
So
how does the rest of the pack react to the notion of that Beanstalk wants to run to Canada?
So he's going to look up from smacking the carburetor with a small hammer, and just go, yeah, having a loud stretch would be great, but can you help?
Help with what? Once was fate, twice is also fate.
I'm too hungry to run. I'm too hungry to help. Can't you just fix it? Or alternatively, does anyone have any steak or something delicious? Yeah, like a fresh carcass. Oh, that could do the spot. That could make me help so much better. Oh.
So for reference, Beanstalk is talking in Garu, even if everyone else is speaking in stupid weak English language. Well, it's a pity you weren't
coming through there.
It's a pity you weren't born some form of apex predator, isn't it? Come now. I can get dinner for us. No problem.
We'll help with the van.
Beanstalk.
Yeah,
I'll help with the supervising.
So at this point, is so annoyed with the van that she's just going to throw the hammer down and go, yeah, okay, fine. And is just going to dive off the side of the road and go hunting with you, I guess. Yeah, just annoyed that the van is broken down again.
Okay, so what happens here is kind of Holly, you walk off into the edges of the woods. Pierre and Inga are kind of looking over the van. Beanstalk, I'm sorry for using the names of players. I cannot remember all the names of all the characters in this. As Holly's character heads off into the wood, you kind of consider the edge of the wood in a different direction. You hear an odd noise, like a trilling whistle, coming from a slightly different direction to the one your packmate has taken in the woods.
I think I will tense up immediately, almost instinctively. and maybe kind of pat one of the other nearby pack members, kind of to caution them a little bit.
Sure. You were kind of looking over at the noise naturally as it did so. You turn around to do so. Your pack mates are gone.
And I'm in Krynos form.
Sure. Yeah. You shift immediately. There's absolutely no problem. As you do so, and presumably take a couple of steps, I take it you're kind of like, looking around in immediate alarm. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Your pack mates are gone. You can not hear them, nor see them, or even worse, smell them. And what you immediately hear is a clunky mechanical sound coming from under the van.
Okay. I will. I'll take a look under the van.
Sure. Under the van is Becca, the mechanic from Cincinnati.
Oh.
She's tinkering away with spanners. I've got a lot of work to do to fix this. Give me a moment. There are more noises coming from the woods nearby, twitterings and flutterings and soft, indistinct voices.
I think at this point I need to get into the Umbra because this is getting very abstract and I need to be on the same wavelength as it. So I'm going to find the wing mirror and I'm going to step sideways.
Sure. You find yourself melting into the Umbra easily as a knife goes through butter. And in the Umbra, the edge of the wood is even more noticeable. The same sounds are coming from it alongside kind of twinkling lights and a soft kind of like hazy sense of motion, as well as quite, it has to be said, a pleasant, rich, earthy smell.
I will take one last look at the open sky, maybe mutter a quick, invocation to Raven, and set off into the forest towards whatever this is.
Okay. After only a few steps, many small odd spirits, gafflings of all kinds, emerge from the treetops and underbrush. They twist and soar in the air, some giving off a soft haze of light, and others leaving trails behind them like mirror images that slowly fade. Some are animal-like, some plant-like, others still look like nothing you have ever seen. It's really quite beautiful. What are you doing with them? Are you attempting to kind of interact or communicate with them in any way or anything else?
Yeah, I think I will try and greet one of them with my spirit speech.
Okay. You reach out to one in the air. It is flitting around like some kind of odd bird. It regards you for a few seconds, and then all the spirits start to die, fading or corroding or falling to pieces, each letting out a shrill noise of despair as they are destroyed by some unknown force. Within moments, they are gone, and you hear a colossal single beat of a drum behind you. It comes from some way behind you, perhaps back at the van.
Yeah, I will turn then and once again, head back towards the van.
You turn, and there in front of you is an indistinct figure in green robes gliding through the trees. He reaches for you. Mage. Carolyn, you are studying in Narentus Library. It is a rambling series of shelves, passageways, and stacks with a large open central area under a huge clear glass dome facing out onto the infinite sky of this cloud realm. No sun is ever visible, but the light is never-ending, bright and warm. There are many students seated here, some quietly studying and others softly talking on the many benches, tables, and comfortable old study chairs. All the walls and shelves are a flawless white that reflects the light without too much glare, and the overriding smell is one of old paper and binding glue. An open circle in the floor leads to a vast staircase by which people arrive and leave. You are sat with your study group, which coincidentally is also your circle. You probably came here in search of a specific book, I would imagine. What book might that be? Give us a ridiculous name for a tome a mage might read.
The Time of All the Lives That Never Were.
Sounds good. Do you want to have any particular interaction with your circle mates before you go try and find this book, or are you happy to just wander off?
I think I will have wandered off just after being slightly too, like, I'm not good in libraries, so like, you know, I'm like tapping to a rhythm, and I'm like constantly fidgeting, and like, you know, can't sit still in my seat, and then I sort of get up and walk around, and yeah. So I've realized that I have been very annoying, and so I'm like, I'm just gonna go look for that book.
Sure. You've got a fairly good idea of where to find it in the frankly rambling and probably slightly reality warped interior of Narentus Library, and you make your way through the passageways and along the shelves and the stacks. You can, there's always this kind of like background hubbub of everyone in the central area here. So you're just kind of making your way until you do locate it. About 5 minutes later, in the spot where you thought it was, you pull it off the shelf and kind of like check over it. What did you say? The
Time of All the Lives That Never Were. Yeah,
you find it. It's a fairly ponderous tome, but it does have some good information about manipulating the time spheres, particularly regarding life and matter, which seems to apply to it. You've got what you want. I take it we're heading back to the study group.
Yeah, I'll take it back. I'll sort of,
sure,
maybe start, humming a
Absolutely.
little bit.
Well, about 10 minutes later, you have to conclude you're finding it quite difficult to make your way back. In fact, the more you search the passageways for the turns that you thought were there, the more the noise of the other students recedes.
Can I see anyone?
No, you haven't seen anyone for about 10 minutes, in fact.
Mira? Charlie? No response. I
carry on looking, or
I'll sort of hasten myself, kind of going faster and trying to like pinpoint if there's any. Is there anything recognizable? Is it still the same library?
It does seem to be the same library, and in fact, you find a very recognizable point when you round a corner and walk a few steps, which is a shelf with a book on it saying "The Time of All the Lives That Never Were." It's still on the shelf.
Yeah, I look down at my hands.
You have a book in your hands.
Yeah,
sure. You are holding a simple and old-looking tome with a battered green leather cover that simply has the word "glass" on it. GLAS.
I open the book.
As you open it, the light dims around you. Above are only harsh, bright stars in a night sky. The rushing sound of a huge wave crashing into a rocky shore echoes around the shelves. And something is moving around a corner nearby you.
I turn to look, see if I can see anything.
You can. You see an indistinct figure in green robes hovering silently between the shelves as books tumble down. He reaches for you. Wraith. After wandering for some time, trying to find your way more towards a recognizable area of the Skinlands, John, you've stumbled into a blasted area that seems only slightly less devastated than the Citadel from which you left. Shortly after setting foot here, you have heard cries and sounds of violence coming from past a ridge nearby. It is quite a high, sharp ridge that you're fairly sure if you wanted to check what's happening on the other side, you could probably scramble up it and take a peek without too much trouble. You're going to have to kind of, if not, you'll probably have to be in the eye line without knowing what's there, because the only way forward, other than going back to the Citadel, is like, would be in view of whatever's happening here.
No, I want to go look at the ridge.
Okay. You scramble up it and peek over stealthily as you can, and you see a huge figure in elaborately forged soul steel armor, crushing and rending several warped and deformed spectres with a large black blade, tearing one of them apart with a single gauntleted hand. The spectres howl and they thrash, but they are clearly outmatched. You recognize the hierarchy enforcer Prime, the back of his armor now fixed with more chains and hooks, almost too many to count. At the end of each is a pinioned and wailing restless, writhing in torment with every movement of Prime's form. The spectres are swiftly dealt with, and Prime's neck arches up, and behind that faceless helm, you hear him sniffing the air.
I stay very still and hope he doesn't start walking towards me.
Sure. Well, I hate to disappoint you, but that helm turns in your direction. The sniffing stops. You hear him exhale a noise, and he takes a step in your direction.
I think I'm probably going to try and run in the opposite direction then.
Absolutely. You scramble over the wreckage. You can hear the thump of his footsteps behind you, not seeming to gain any distance or any further closeness. You are honestly finding it very difficult to flee across this rocky ground, back more or less in the direction of the Citadel. Ahead of you, just under a kind of overhang of twisted soul steel, part of the walls of the old Citadel, perhaps, you can see a rocky tunnel in the ground, which your frantic brain registers as clearly too small for Prime.
Head for that then.
Okay. You dive into the tunnel and I assume carry on scrambling forwards, or are you kind of just lurking and hoping for the best?
I think I'm gonna carry on forwards because I don't know how far he can reach, and I don't know how far he can mess with me.
You don't know what kind of arcane oil or whatever he might have.
And I don't know how long he's going to sit there waiting for me.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's not like he'll need food or drink, right? So, well, you head into the tunnel and it twists and turns very quickly into several, lit only by an odd white luminescence on the walls. Are you just picking a random one and going, or are you pausing to kind of evaluate in any way?
Abby knows that one of the sensible ways to go through a physical labyrinth is to pick a wall and stick with it.
Right, always
so
go left.
I'm going to keep my left hand against the wall.
Sure, you do so. You pass into the left-hand passage, and then again when another split opens up, and it is partway down that when you've been fleeing down. You've probably been fleeing down the tunnels for a couple of minutes now. As I say, lit by this strange white luminescence. And when you are a couple of minutes further into these tunnels, you start to hear strange sounds from behind you and ahead of you. They are footsteps and shuffling and distant voices. And somewhere, as your senses kind of telescope ahead of you, somewhere at the heart of the tunnels is heard the stomping and snorting noise of some monstrous beast. Somehow, you feel you always knew that this place was down here, a labyrinth below the world. And at the center of every labyrinth is a beast, waiting to devour you. All the other noises and echoes wash away with a sudden, violent report of thunder to rival the maelstrom hitting the walls of the citadel. Ahead of you in the tunnel, blocking it, is an indistinct figure in green robes drifting through the tunnel and towards you. He reaches for you. Inga. Wonder how this is going to go. You have left the festivities and are traveling through the Highland Garden, this public sort of quite whimsical garden space that we were in before, with like a large plastic tree and little gnomes and models everywhere, and a kind of little train that goes through holes in the trees. As you do so, as you're stumbling along, quite drunk and satisfied by the events of the evening, you note that the sounds of nighttime Cincinnati go oddly quiet.
Yeah, I kind of clock it as odd, but I don't think I do anything in particular. Can keep
going,
stumbling.
Yeah. As you do so, the bushes and trees seem to still themselves with a hushed rustling, as the warbling from the frogs frequenting the ponds around you goes silent. Then one noise cuts through the cool night air, the clear clarion call of a hunting horn nearby, followed by a rush of noise as if huge animals are charging through the brush towards you.
Oh boy. Is there a tree to climb?
There probably are, but honestly, the sound of the size of these animals, it might not matter.
Too big. Might not matter. I guess I'll run then.
Yep, stumblingly, drunkenly running away. It seems.
Yeah, run.
Seems a good solution. Absolutely. Well, fleeing where the noise is coming from will take you into the trees, which grow larger and more cluttered with every step. Just as Eden Park once became a jungle in front of your eyes, the Highland Garden seems to shift into an ancient primeval woodland with every yard that passes. It becomes increasingly difficult to scramble through this terrain, and an overwhelming scent of wet fur and rank saliva becomes more and more apparent. Obviously, I'm guessing you're keeping running. Are you trying, like, at any point in this, have you tried to look over your shoulder or anything like that? Or is it completely head down, limbs pumping?
Yeah. Just running. You look behind, you fall. That's
Sure,
yeah.
absolutely.
We've been there before.
Yeah. You have
last time we just had to run pretty hard, right?
It's
like,
true.
Yeah.
It's true. Yeah, my only thought was like I'd imagine a sense, but would just be like fuck. But because you're drunk, I wondered if you were like, ooh. I have low value of drunk people, so yeah, it's fine. Well, from trees on either, like between the trees on either side of you, you do get kind of fleeting impressions of monstrous dark shapes racing towards you, howling and barking, and that hunting horn sounds out again, worryingly close behind you. Again, trying to get a glimpse of it, or just keeping going as fast as you possibly can.
Yeah. Yeah. Go on. Have a peek. See what I'm dealing. See what I'm
Sure.
running from.
Well, behind you there is a larger shape still, shadowed but towering in silhouette against the moon, crowned with antlers and holding a spear aloft. You can feel the hot breath of the hounds at your back as you emerge out of the trees and stumble into a shallow lake, falling to your hands and knees in cold water. The sounds of the hunt fade away as sunlight blooms on the horizon, filled with nothing but a wild, ancient landscape. From what sounds like very close by, a cockerel crows a piercing cry. An indistinct figure in green robes floats over the water and reaches for you. Okay, we will not end it just there. So we're running a little late today, guys. You all awaken, immediately aware of being slumped on a cool, smooth surface of some kind. As your senses gradually flood back, you realize you are contained in a reasonably sized glass case, as if on display in some obscene museum. Around you, arranged in 2 concentric circles, are more glass boxes, 10 in total. In each is someone or something else. To your left, and I'm trying to go around this in order, Natalia, to your left is a young woman dressed in moderately trendy and hippie-ish modern clothing with sharp purple eyes. To your right is a monster out of the tales of everything your elders ever warned you about. A hulking, oddly shaped lupine beast barely contained within the glass case. I've given that. Does everyone kind of get who will be to their left and who will be to their right? Is that reasonable in order of the stories we played out tonight? So to your left, so for example, as well, for Carolyn, to Carolyn's left is Beanstalk. To Carolyn's right is, and actually this is interesting, a swirling, smoky, vague shape. That's what you can perceive of Abby, right? In the state that Abby is currently in. So that's the only one who doesn't appear as they normally would. I will also tell each of you who is in the case ahead of you, in the inner concentric circle of cases, okay? Natalia, ahead of you in a case is a skinny, almost scrawny man with slicked back brownish blonde hair who still carries the pockmarked scars of some kind of disease from his mortal days. He wears a simple, long-sleeved white button-down shirt and grey slacks. His name is Loveland. Beanstalk. Ahead of you, a woman of ambiguous heritage dressed in battered, unzipped hoodie, a delivery company work shirt, and patched-up jeans. She wears a backwards baseball cap over short dreadlocks. Her name might be Branwen. Carolyn. Ahead of you, a somewhat tall and lithe man in a torn and frayed tweed suit, floppy chin-length dark hair framing a reasonably handsome face, surmounted with willfully intellectual glasses. His name is Professor Will Cray. Abby. Ahead of you, a desperate and filthy-looking old man with a tangled beard and scraps of clothing barely clinging to his partly decayed corpus. You do not know his name, but you know him. Finally, Rhea. Ahead of you, a large and powerful man clad shoulders to toes in heavy white enameled armor, an innocent look on his blue-skinned face under a shock of blonde hair and 2 short horns. His name is Marshall. The floor of the large room around you is constructed of old, pitted grey stone, overgrown with rampant and dead vegetation that covers almost everything. Light comes from what seems like a circular opening far overhead, which means that most of the chamber is shrouded in shadow and shafts of illumination that glint off drifting dust and plant spores. The walls look to be made of some stone and wrought dark iron with old flaking lighter paint. They are mostly also coated with creeping, partly withered plant life, and near them glitters shards and fragments of glass on the ground. The entire space seems like an odd merger between a castle and a greenhouse, both of which have seen better days. As your eyes eventually adjust to the odd light, you see one other figure. Beyond the glass of your case, beyond the inner circle of glass cases in front of you, at the very center of the room is a horribly familiar robed individual. He is suspended in midair, arms at his side and palms outward in an incongruously relaxed posture. Under the dark green hood, his head tilts to one side as if slumped in semi-consciousness. He is completely still, but his hissing breath is labored and inconsistent as if he is undergoing some great exertion. A morose voice emerges from the case containing Professor Will Cray. Well, I can say with the utmost zeal that this is precisely not how I wanted this matter to end. And there is the first session of Final Arc of Cincinnati Chronicles. Railroadian Matt talks out bits as it was, but hopefully entertaining. Thank you so much for my players for taking part. Thanks to you for watching it and hopefully enjoying it, especially those of you who are coming from the first 5 arcs and going, ooh, how is this going to tie things together? You've got a lot to get through, Matt. You've got a major task ahead of you. I know. So let's get some promo out of the way, and then we'll address comments and questions. If you pop them in chat, John will pop them up on screen afterwards. Promo down below, we've got links to YouTube, links to Twitch. Check out one and the other, depending on your preference, or both, even better. There's also links to Patreon and social media and Discord. Check those out if you're interested. We run 3 weekly series at the moment. Mondays is Vason, Wednesdays is Simbaroom, Thursdays is this, the Cincinnati Chronicles. It will be with us for the next few weeks at least. We also run one-shots once or twice a month. Most recently, we had Mask Witches of Forgotten Doggerland. Coming up, we've got Land of Een. We've got a special Bat Out of Hell one-shot. We've got, what's it called? Hell Knight. We've got all those coming up. You can check out our schedule on Twitch for them. You can also check out our events on our Discord because that lists them all as well. We'd love to see you at any and all of them. And with that, John, comment us, please. What we got? This is for John. 9 Inch Nails were from Cleveland and apparently also existed in the 90s. Sure, but 9 Inch Nails released their first record in 1989. Their first official major label record, and I was looking for something that in 96 would be a bit more cutting edge, enough to be sponsored by the Toreador, which for that place and time in the American Midwest, as Chris will well know and attest to, for whatever reason, less so nowadays, but pre-real popular, like the real popularness of the internet, America was weirdly behind the curve on electronic music broadly. So I think something that is more like we'd call dance music here in the mid-90s to a Toreador in America would be like, right? So I was thinking something more like Chemical Brothers, Daft Punk, that kind of sound. Bit of classical influence to make the Ventru happy, like something like that is what I was thinking. Was the idea? Yeah, you can put 9 Inch Nails there, fine, whatever.
Someone sampled Mozart and has overlaid it on top of drum and bass, and that's
that would Next, while my cat does his level best to interrupt the end of the stream. Pierre, Eddie is in a prison of a different kind. The prison of greed. A prison of carrots and celery. A prison of vegetable lust. 42, in the hell for gluttony, and he doesn't notice. You're all just side characters in Eddie's story.
Yep.
As it should be.
His punishment.
I'm wondering how you're going to bring all of us together with Eddie again, and like how you're going to tie that together.
Sure. I'm wondering how I did that scene with Urania and then the scene with Eddie in such close proximity, and people didn't bounce off it like some fucking dissonant. Donkey Food, I love Eddie. We all love Eddie. I created him, so I can't really say I love him.
Apart from Eddie loves carrots and celery.
Eddie loves carrots and celery.
I like to think, because my changeling character Elena got art patronage from the lady, I like to imagine that over the past year she's painted a lot of portraits of Eddie.
Or Eddie in a lot of other people's portraits, looking noble on their lap or something.
Yes.
Yeah. Ooh,
Can't believe you're all sleeping on Grumbo.
Grumbo's great.
I was literally, I had no idea of that character's name, and just Grumbo.
What are you talking about?
And then immediately was like, it has to be Grumbo.
It links to so many of the extra bits of lore. It's all connected.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
The G stands for something. The R stands for something.
Yeah. Are we forgetting about that famous shade, Grumbo Green?
Grumbo Green.
It's all coming together.
Grumbo Green. John, bold of you to assume that van still has a wing mirror. Yeah, that's
in fairness.
It probably has one. It's just kind of duct taped on. It doesn't really count anymore.
Yeah. And also, let's be honest, by the time you looked in the wing mirror, what are the chances you were actually in reality anymore?
That's true. That's very true.
There we go.
I was able to go.
I can hear my cat purring through my headphones. As in, I can hear the purring going into my microphone and coming into my headphones.
Amazing.
So that's a treat for everyone.
I think that's it.
Cool. Well, like, I know we're running a little late, but players, what do we think? Did any bits of that stand out? There was still, meta little references and stuff in there. I tried to throw a lot of the side characters and stuff back in.
No, I'm profoundly shocked that in each of the sequences you gave us one kind of semi-trustworthy character who was kind of a mentor or kind of a really good help or someone we could build bonds with, and now you put them in mortal freaking peril. And I'm more surprised that I didn't call this the minute you made me form an emotional connection with someone.
Are we still talking about the role-playing game? Or...
I don't even know anymore, man.
It could have been worse. It could have been Eddie in the case.
Yeah, no, that would have been. Yeah, I
Or
think that would have been
Grumbo.
everyone just logged
We
on.
would have never forgiven you, is the thing. That's at that point, we'll go off the
Wednesday
rails.
Night Watchers, I could have put Berimo in there. It's Chris like that. So, yeah. There we go. Hopefully that answered some questions. Raised quite a lot more. And we are good to go with a little less railroady rest of the story. But I had to get you all there, didn't I? So
no, we were all naturally
I feel
just
like
gonna...
story setup or like establishing episode is not the same as railroad.
no, it
Like-
isn't. You're right.
Yeah.
But I have to defend myself against 1,000 RPG bloggers every time I run. So,
You don't.
No, I don't.
Fuck it.
But I will anyway. So there we go. Oh my god. At least he did this at the end. Is the thing.
It would have ruined the mood a little bit.
Yeah,
He just heard
this
the
is
key
all day,
phrase.
every day. By the way, for anyone who wonders if this is a unique thing he does on streams.
Yeah. He just heard
what
about
he's-
Green Grumbo. And
Yeah,
bam!
what he's trying to do is get me to put my chair back so he can lie on my chest, because that's his favorite thing to do. So there we go. One last thing in question. I'm just, because I'm paranoid about this as well. This question goes out to everyone, but only Chris will be the person who answers. Another shade of green added, Chris? Did we spot it?
Oh, I did not, but now I've remembered
now
the,
you do.
the sequence.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it was the name of the
What?
book, wasn't it?
Yep. Glaz is a type of green in Irish.
Oh, I didn't even realize that because you pronounced it slightly wrong. Oh,
I looked up pronunciations, and they said that. How do you pronounce it, Chris? So I get it right the
Glass.
next time.
as in a glass of water.
Oh, that's not what the pronunciation thing said. They said it was like a shortened, so it was more like glass.
If
glass.
Only there was someone here who's had a lived experience with the language.
Look, the pronunciation videos had an Irish accent, right?
Fight!
So
Fight.
maybe they were. Oh no! I've got it right, Chris. I've got it right because the pronunciation guides there were 3 different pronunciation guides for different localities.
Okay.
And I picked the locality. Right. Look, when all this is done, you'll be happy. That's all I'm saying. One of them was pronounced differently, and that was the one I chose because I have a reason for that within the story.
You've seen it.
Okay.
No, that's a spoiler because now I've got an idea what one of the settings is.
There's all sorts of other stuff happening behind the scenes, and now Chris has an idea of it. We'll move forward from that. Metagaming. So thank you everyone for watching and participating. We'll join you next week for more Cincinnati Chronicles. Until then, take care, stay safe, be good or bad. We'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Goodbye.